Joining us now to discuss this and all things Congress, Kevin Frey, Washington correspondent for Spectrum News, New York 1. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. So this is a situation that obviously puts a lot of teachers as well as potentially clergy and others on the spot. These are places that historically, obviously, we said, you know what, this is not a place where we're going to execute this kind of enforcement. There is obviously a question about who's going to pay for the stepped-up enforcement. That's a role that Congress has. What's the reaction been so far to this announcement?
Well, I mean, look, we've seen schools and school districts, for example, New York City, where I cover predominantly. I mean, they have been training their staff to try to figure out how to navigate these sorts of instances and see exactly what the best way is to implement this on the ground in terms of dealing with these sorts of attempts. In terms of just the general sense, though, I mean, this fits into the general narrative of kind of the shock and awe that the Trump administration is trying to lay out. And so this is fitting into that aspect of the agenda, because even if they don't go through with it in the short term, the fear is perhaps the larger implication.
Yeah, and this is setting up as well a lot of tension between state and local officials and the Trump administration. I want to put a little bit more of what Tom Homan had to say. The Denver mayor, of course, has kind of pushed back on the federal government, said that they're not going to cooperate with some of their plans in his city. Let's watch what Homan had to say about him.
Me and the Denver mayor, we agree on one thing. He's willing to go to jail. I'm willing to put him in jail. We're going to enforce the law, period. And they're not going to stop us.
We're going to enforce the law, and they're not going to stop us. He's willing to go to jail. I'm willing to put him there. Like you said, you cover New York. This is a place that cities across the country are grappling with.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the separation of powers, which traditionally you think of Republicans basically arguing that local jurisdictions should be leading the way on issues. This is very much a different opposite approach on that, where it's more or less dictating down. It also then puts these local officials in this uncomfortable position. Obviously, he's threatening to essentially jail him, of trying to throw out their own jurisdiction and enforce their own local regulations. On top of this is also the idea of the sanctuary city policies, which, of course, is become really in the spotlight by Republicans for some time now, and trying to, among other things that we've seen Congress talk about, is float legislation to essentially defund them or pull back federal funding from them and threaten federal funding in response to them not changing their local on-the-ground policies.
Yeah. So, Kevin, we obviously have kind of this big picture, one, two, whatever, massive legislation that's going to move through Congress. But one of the more pressing issues facing Congress here, and President Trump, we know, plans to travel to California to view the wildfires later on this week, view the damage that was caused by those wildfires. Congress needs to send help. There's a huge need. But there are questions about conditions that may be placed on the aid. I want to show you what Mike Johnson had to say in a recent interview on Fox News about this. Let's watch.
Are you saying that California, if they continue to aid and abet law-breaking and harbor illegal immigrants, money from D.C. gets cut off?
Yeah, we're talking about conditions to this disaster aid.
Is that going to get through? I mean, are there going to be conditions on this disaster aid?
Well, let's start with a couple different things. There are many different pieces that are at play here in terms of how Congress is going to figure things out over the next couple of months. Because on top of that, you also have the idea of tying disaster aid to the debt ceiling. You have the question of specific regulations, which it's ironic given that Speaker Johnson is from Louisiana. Of course, they have dealt with plenty of disasters and have needed plenty of money funneled into that state. It's not clear to me exactly how this ends. Democrats are already very much adamant that, one, conditions are a non-starter, and the idea of throwing the debt ceiling into all of this is also a non-starter. And part of that is because Democrats coming into this Congress, after it wasn't touched in December, despite Trump's last-minute push, view the debt ceiling as one of their bargaining chips and their ability to actually kind of extract something from
Trump. Yeah, they're going to
Trump.
need Democratic votes to raise the debt ceiling.
Completely.
So they have to give them something.
They have to get something in exchange.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Kevin Frey, thank you very much for being with us today. Appreciate it. See you soon.